Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hunting with a Passion podcast. We're in the middle of our summer scouting series, and today I'm super excited to have Jared SCHEFFLER from Whitetail Adrenaline come on the podcast and talk with us about different ways that he prepares for his hunts before he goes out of state, and things he does while he's there to help make their hunt successful. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you enjoy this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel and share us with your friends. Welcome back to another episode, Hunting with a Passion podcast here. As you can see, we're just getting things set up here. As you can tell with the t-shirt, fix my mic here for a second because we're real here. We don't edit or anything. So anyway, but as you can tell with the t-shirt, we're having Jared SCHEFFLER on today. He should be coming on here in a minute. But it's been super hot here in Pennsylvania, and I'm ready for deer season, for it to be cold. Not cold, but cooler. I'm sure, Jeremiah, you are too.
Yeah, it's been hot, 95 here. I'm ready for fall. I don't even like summer anymore. I'm just
Right?
spring and fall. Bring it on.
I like it up to about July 4th, and then I'm like, all right, it's over. Let's go. Let's hit fall. So, But yeah, this is my new house, new podcasting area, at least until it gets cold, and then I'll go back in the house. But dude, I'm loving this place. I moved here about a month ago, I think. Just the way things worked out, this was able to work out for us. So it's closer to work, and I got hunting land all over me. My wife had a bear in the front yard this morning on our porch, so that was pretty cool. I'm at work, and she calls me, and she's like, "There's a bear in our yard. What do I do?" And I'm like, just make noise. They'll run away. It's not a grizzly bear. Like, it's not gonna hurt you. So,
Yeah.
I am setting up trail cameras probably the beginning of August. So, in about a week or two or so,
Okay.
or in a few
Yeah.
weeks. Looks like Jared is coming on. It's connecting audio. Mr. SCHEFFLER, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you guys?
Hey, we're
Doing well.
doing fantastic, trying to stay cool. Welcome to our little podcast. I'm Seth. I was the one that's been talking to you, and then this is Jeremiah.
Okay. All right.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Jeremiah.
Where are you from at?
Well, I live in Iowa now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So,
but based on the accent, you used to be from Wisconsin, right?
originally, yes,
Okay.
from Wisconsin. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, for people that don't know you, that have been living under a rock and don't know who Whitetail Adrenaline is, tell us a little bit about you and your team and everything, Jared.
Yeah. And it's okay if everybody's been living under a rock. It's a safe place to be sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, so I produced the Whitetail Adrenaline DVD series. So
That's awesome.
Been doing that since 2007.
There we go. Sorry, my camera
So
was
do y'all
messing up.
do? Yeah.
What's that?
Go ahead.
No, do you just mainly just do stick with the whitetail hunting, or you guys do any other videoing for any other game?
Yeah, we do. We dabble in elk a bit. For
Okay.
the most part, whitetail. We started doing a little bit of mule deer if they kind of happen to get in the way more so, and we happen to have the tag option. But
I
haven't
gotcha.
really specifically chased muleys. There's been a couple of hunts my buddy Tanner's been on, or one. Probably two, where it was probably more likely that he'd end up with a muley than a whitetail, I'd say. So.
I
But
gotcha.
for the most part, it's whitetail based.
Gotcha.
Cool.
So our series, kind of what we're going on right now, is we're calling it our summer scouting series. So we were talking a little bit, I guess a week or so ago, about cell cameras and stuff like that, and how different people feel about it. But we've been talking mainly, though, just how we're going to get out there this summer and just bringing people on and kind of getting advice on how they do it. Now, I know you do more the spot and stock and the glassing and all that. Is there anything that you do like throughout the summer that helps with your scouting in the summer, that kind of helps with your hunting in the fall?
Actually, not at all. I Not even kidding. I haven't done any of that for 2010. I think we did a couple of times, Jim and I. We went out in the summer or late. I guess that was probably late summer, getting close to fall. Just a couple of evenings. Let's go look at some spots.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of that back in the day. I mean, all year long. I used to do a lot. There's pros and cons to both. Strengths and weaknesses to both. I guess as a younger person, I would have thought that there was nothing but strengths on pre-scouting and summer scouting. As I got older, I kind of seen it differently, but to a certain degree. Now in the fall, some guys have a leg up more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes, quite often, the guys that have a leg up come to find out that a lot changes in a quick hurry, and they no longer are at an advantage any more than I am, and probably at a disadvantage oftentimes because they're basing all their hunt plans based off of summer things and prior signs. So now sometimes that can give a person a leg up though too. So it gives you a good starting.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, anybody. I mean, I used to love doing all that scouting too. So I mean, whatever trips your trigger, rocks your boat wherever you're at. I don't. Whichever way works for you.
Yeah.
I got you.
This year a little bit I did more like postseason, like in January or February, kind of like when they're still kind of similar to what they were doing in the later fall-ish. And I found that to be a little more easier to find sign, with the snow and maybe some of the bucks coming in later into or the does coming into later rut, I guess. I know some people believe in the second rut or whatever. I'm not really going to debate that because whatever. But like I found more sign then, and I really don't like. I like going in the woods in the summer, but like with the mosquitoes and everything like that, it's just not as fun as compared to like what I was finding in the winter and stuff like that. Which I felt like it'd be more. I feel like I was able to use that information that I found more in January, February to apply it to the fall with even like the weather conditions and stuff like that than to like what they're doing like right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's hunting, and when you're hunting deer are not all the same.
Right.
Each deer is different deer. So, and you get different pockets where some pockets or some states and definitely pockets within those states receive a lot more pressure than others. In certain areas of the country, you can kind of get away with blowing the deer out in the summer, getting close to hunting, and not have it affect them that much if they're getting blown out everywhere. For example, they just kind of adapt and float around and get bumped. They're getting used to it. Other areas that don't receive that, I mean, it's not generally advantageous to go poking around. It's kind of like if you could, without ever stepping foot on the ground, put together a pretty good plan the day you're hunting, you haven't tampered with it at all. Right. I say that, but then also public land gets tampered with quite a bit throughout the fall. Yeah. So what I found a long time ago, though, is when you're, at least in a lot of the places, and here again, this isn't a rule by any means or a one size fits all, but when you're gathering all of that information, so much changes in those public land environments that a lot of times that sign and stuff I found didn't really give me a leg up. But I also think that it's relative to some of those things we just discussed or talked about just a little bit there, and I think you can get a leg up on it in certain ways too, but it's kind of situational based. And if you do enough scouting, then you got enough different pockets and different things that where you can kind of be adaptable and plug into them if one goes cold or one receiving a lot of pressure. By all that off-season scouting, you may have identified many different, pockets or stand sets or locations to where you got a lot of options where you're not just completely winging it like what I do. But that's where it's like, somebody tries to tell me that pre-scouting doesn't work. I couldn't agree with that either. You know what I mean? Right. I don't do that anymore. But
so
it's subject to so many relative factors and changes and things like that. I mean, crop rotations and all of it, all kinds of things can change. They can come in and log an area or clear cut it. You spent all winter scouting it around and figuring out everything, and everything changed. And then it's like, oh man, what do I do now? And so I didn't decide I wasn't going to pre-scout anymore or any of that. Early on, when I started this business, it just required so much of my time and so much effort that I literally just had to give something up. And that happened to be the thing that went by the wayside. And at the same time, our hunting style got a lot more aggressive. And as it got more aggressive, we got a lot more results. And it didn't seem to matter. And as time went on and enough seasons went on, I reflected back on, well, why is that? Like, that doesn't make sense compared to what I was under the impression I needed to do 20 years ago.
Right.
I got you. When you guys go, since you're not doing as much summer scouting or none at all, when you guys go out west or you go anywhere, you're going hunting, Kansas, wherever you're going, do you then leave a few days earlier than you normally would? So the first few days is kind of more scout/hunting to relocate them areas. I mean, you guys have gone enough now that over the past few years or however you've been doing it, that you kind of know already in your head, okay, this spot usually produces a good deer, or this has this. But like before that, are you leaving, giving yourself a few days to scout and then quote hunt?
Sort of.
Because you're not doing the summer scouting.
Sort of. The first day is a hunt day. But those first 3 days might be utilized more as scouting, I guess, and everything
kind of hunt
that entails, like whether it's driving by a lot of different pieces of public or whatnot. Those first few days, they are hunt days. We're going to go in if we peg one and the situation's right or whatever. They are hunt days, but oftentimes we do that the first 3 days of being in an area or pocket or whatnot. Occasionally on an early when the season's like opening up, like in another state, we've done some early September stuff, and we'll get out there, a day before. It's been a long time, I think maybe since 2 days before, but we'll get out there occasionally on something like that. Now like elk gun, we generally 2 days prior to the season, because all hell breaks loose once the opener happens. So you want to have your ideally you've got a herd bull peg somewhere, and you're probably going to play cat and mouse with a bunch of other hunters trying to put together a plan too. And
I got you.
So it just depends, every state, every hunt, every situation is kind of got a different set of variables. So you gotta, as a hunter, you gotta weigh those out and, okay, what makes sense,
Yeah.
So.
Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Yeah, go ahead. Now, I was going to ask you, like, is the way you hunt, you say you live in Iowa now. I know Iowa's got kind of some row crop, and I'm sure it's got pockets of woods and stuff. Do you hunt differently, let's say, in the state of Iowa where you live, different style of hunting than you do if you go out to like Wyoming or Kansas or Arizona or Colorado or whatnot, just because it's more woods, I would say, than fields and pockets like you're talking about. I've watched some of y'all's videos and out west, and you're glassing a deer a mile and a half off, and like, okay, you dipped off in that pocket, and then you're going. Well, I've not been in Iowa very much, but there's not a whole lot of. There is a little opportunity, I feel like, maybe in that, but do you hunt differently?
I do. Yes and no. I will still take that first day or two, even if I've hunted the area before, and I will generally most of that time, if not all that time, is spent in the vehicle. Not always, but most of the time, just gathering more like pressure pockets and getting a general feel of things. You might see some does coming out on the backside. Maybe it's getting close to rut, and I'm just kind of like taking all the information in kind of as I see it. But well, I mean, this last fall, I mean, I dove right into the timber without visuals, you know, and I should have killed a big one, but I should have. I really didn't get an opportunity with the longbow. With a compound, yeah, I would have had a very, very nice large buck. So I shouldn't say I would have, but a good compound,
a little better opportunity.
You know, a situation at say 50 yards in a pretty wide open lane and a lot of time to execute the shot. That's a pretty chip shot in my eyes to make. So anything can happen, but you know, it was a pretty good situation. So
I got you.
We don't always, I mean, yeah, Iowa has more timber. So, I mean, I'm just kind of rolling back scenarios and situations. I did it a number of years back too. You know, took those first couple days to really just drive by everything. Didn't really get visuals, but basically eliminated a lot of acreage from the vehicle that I evaluated as probably not worth my time, and what portions of timber I should spend some time in. And it's really hard to put that in verbal without being there on site and explain what that looks like, because sometimes it's kind of a feeling, but that feeling, I think a lot of times, is your mind putting together all the different variables and whatever.
So in when you're hunting in Iowa, do you still, for the most part, try to hunt on the ground? Is that something you've confined yourself to, that I'm always going to hunt on the ground versus a tree stand?
I haven't really set it as like a hard rule for myself, but yeah, I don't really, I've only shot one buck out of the trees on the videos, and that was back in 2007.
Wow.
Okay.
It was the first buck on the video series.
Tree stand?
What's that?
I said, was that like the last time you were in a tree stand in 2007?
It wasn't the last time I was in a tree stand, but it is the first buck shot on the Whitetail Adrenaline series, and it is the last one that I've shot from a tree. It was 2007.
Gotcha.
So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Jeremiah and I went to,
unless I've forgotten one, but it would have had to been no, because there's only 3 seasons of hunting out of tree stands, and then it's all on the ground. So 07, 08, 09. Yeah, no, that is the first and the last one. I was pretty sure of that, but I was like, as I'm like running back to my head, I'm like, before I say that again, like I'm pretty sure, but no, it is.
Gotcha. So Jeremiah and I, we hunted in Indiana last year for the first time. First time for that, like an out-of-state hunt for me, but also first time hunting on the ground. It was very different. I felt very vulnerable. And it was mostly, Jeremiah, you'd say
don't move.
What's that? Yeah.
I said don't move.
Right. It was kind of later in November, so there wasn't very much cover anyways. But it was mostly a big timber, right, Jeremiah?
Yeah, it was all big timber. There was a few like thicket bottom fields and some sloughs that I'm sure somebody like y'all been doing a while might have been able to slip up on something, but not us. So we came up
on that one buck, or I say the buck came up on us, but But what would be your advice for someone, Jared, that has like, maybe 4 or 5 days, or even a weekend warrior or whatever, that's going on an out-of-state hunt to hunt on the ground, that hasn't had very much time to scout? Or I know you guys say you hunt and drive around at the same time kind of deal. Yeah, you're not hunting from cars, obviously, but but like what would you kind of like give them recommendation or advice on someone like me and Jeremiah that, we're used to hunting out of big boxes in the sky over cornfield plots, or I started saddle hunting last year. That was pretty awesome. Being more mobile and stuff like that. But like, what's for someone like us, would advice you'd give? I know you mostly hunt like open plains and stuff, but I know, I've watched the Uncuffed like a million times, but I know a couple scenes where like Tanner's had that one buck in I forget where it was, by like near the creek and stuff that they stocked up on and stuff like that. But what advice would you give to someone like us?
Well, a lot of our hunting style got formed back when we were more weekend warriors. I mean, that's when it actually really kind of came to fruition. We didn't have a lot of time, and we only had one video camera, and we're trying to produce. Back in that era, you didn't really find public land whitetail hunting videos. I mean, that was 17 years ago. I later found, I knew about the Benoits. They had a few out, a few videos out. And then I found out about Dan Infault the first year I was on the road to the shows. But I mean, you didn't have the World Wide Web and the social medias so much back then and that. So it's like, but they weren't out on like the, you didn't walk into Gander Mountain or Cabela's or whatever. And, the newest public land video came out this year. It just didn't exist.
Yeah.
Not an annual one coming out. And so we were out there trying to take one video camera, produce enough content with enough kills to then produce a video and launch a video every single year, which didn't exist that I'm aware of even to this day, like a yearly release of one. And we were trying to do that on a weekend warrior, work schedule. And that's, I think we just, it was just a natural permission, I think, of us realizing the more aggressive we get and the more we cover ground, and that's helping us get on more bucks, get on more encounters. And I think that's just kind of how it all formed. So a lot of that, and I think people that have watched that earlier, back in those early days, can definitely see that style developing and progressing and getting more aggressive, and they're seeing the encounter rate go up and things like that over those first 5 years of the video series. And well, even beyond the first 5 years, but I think you can definitely see it. And that was more on weekend warrior type, or you're going out of state and you got 5 days, things like that. So I guess the same rules kind of apply. I would say, if anything, we still do that, but we maybe hold our standards a little bit higher to larger caliber deer. And sometimes those hunts can end up taking longer. Whereas, back in them earlier eras, it was like, we'd be happy with say 130-inch buck or something on some of these hunts where there's a lot bigger deer around, but they're going to take more time. So I think as we got more and more finessed with it, our standards of, whether it's age or, buck caliber size or whatever, I think those standards got elevated as we got more efficient. But, if that kind of makes sense, like we might be on a hunt that in the old days, we'd only have 5 days for. Well, we dumped the first 130 that come through, or that we got in a situation with, or something like that. Whereas now it's like, okay, we got a little bit more time, might hold out for a 150 or better or something like that, depending on the state or the area and the region and time and all those different types of things. And then there's always like, okay, if something really cool happens or whatever that makes the hunt really special, it's like standards are, it's like, okay, that was really cool. I don't care that it's not as big a buck as maybe I kind of, had my, whatever preloaded thoughts about. Like, you kind of most hunters set a standard. Like, if they're going somewhere, they've drawn a hunt, like, I'd like to shoot something that's 130 inches or 140, or like hell with Nebraska. If I'm going to Nebraska on a late muzzleloader hunt, it was 120. I'm happy, on that particular hunt. You kind of have that preloaded. A lot of hunters have that preloaded sort of caliber standard, maybe, or to some degree, but then there's always kind of like, all right, that was pretty cool. We were on a deer drive and this happened. And,
right.
A lot of times you're not actually measuring the deer or whatever, but
when you hunt big woods, like what type of like style do you guys do? I know you like hunting the ground and stuff like that, but what is your approach to like hunt? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, how do you know when to keep walking and kind of like how when to sit still and hang tight, and you know what I mean? Like, that's pretty much my question. I don't really know how to word it, if you know what I'm saying.
That one's a tricky one. And before we get any further, you just said big woods. So we should probably define big woods, because big woods to some people is not big woods to other people.
Yeah.
So what I hunt for woods, I would not consider big woods by, say, northern Wisconsin standards, or the New York or Maine or those big woods type standards.
Yeah.
What I'm, the big woods that we're talking about here, let's say you got a whole county and 50 or 60% of its woods, and there's a lot of broken up open. It could be swamp mixed with grass, mixed with crop. You might have hundreds of continuous acres of woods, but I'm not talking about miles of square miles of just timber and nothing else.
Yeah.
Or just timber and just swamps. So,
I'm talking more like lower Indiana. I don't know if you're familiar with that area. It's got like, typically when I thought of Indiana, like my wife's from Indiana, so I'm like, oh, Indiana's all boring and flat. And then we went to lower Indiana last year, and there's like rolling hills, and I'm like, I thought I was in a different state. It was like rolling hills, swamps, several steep hills and stuff like that. There's a couple like it's a big national forest in there. They have a couple cornfields planted that they don't harvest or anything like that. So that's what I'm thinking when I think big woods.
I got you. Yeah. So that type of woods that you're kind of talking about, yeah. And I forget what your question was again.
My question was, how do you approach hunting that is what my question was.
Like I said, that first maybe even the whole day, unless I get a strong feeling on something, I'm going to drive by a lot of it and get an idea of what the pressure's like around there, what potential crops, whether they're private or public. I mean, you're going to have crop in a lot of those areas, and it doesn't matter if it's private or public. If that's the only deer's crop source and a crop source exists in that area, they're going to utilize it to some degree. And so I'm going to kind of take all that information in and then basically essentially in the back of my head, I'm eliminating a lot of acreage as I go and pinpointing potential pockets or parcels that I would maybe consider stepping foot in without ever having, say, a visual of any sort.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, after I've kind of taken in enough information, then depending on wind directions and things like that, I'm gonna go into my top few pieces that I've kind of pre-evaluated, I guess, so to speak, in my mind.
Do you do a lot of
how fast to go?
Well,
what's that?
I said, do you do a lot of e-scouting as well?
No, I hardly do any.
Hardly any. Okay.
Hardly any.
You're a different breed.
Well, and back in the day, I used to do a little bit more, but I literally won't.
Which I don't do a lot.
But I literally won't even look at the map until I'm like on the hunt, unless I'm like new area, how much public's there, and I'm gonna look at that, and I might kind of zoom in. But I haven't done 1 minute of e-scouting this year, so like literally. I don't do any of that. I don't do any of that in prior. Once, like I said, I'm on the hunt or something, that's when I'll kind of, like once I get into an area and I can kind of see it visually and I can see where the pressure's at and things like that, I might like start zooming in just a little bit, looking for the, little nooks and crannies that somebody might miss. But, a lot of anything that looks good that's public land is getting e-scouted. And, and it's kind of been like that actually before e-scouting even got big. Even 20 years ago, the natural funnels and the pinch points and that, there was enough years of guys kind of stumbling around that they had them in the back of their head, or they were printing off on Google Earth. They were printing off the maps and things. And, I seen that even way back in the day. It's just gotten way more easy to just do right on your phone. So it's like, anything that looks pretty good these days is probably getting pounded. And here again, you got enough private land pressure in the area around it. It doesn't mean that if it's getting pounded, deer from private can get pounded into it too. So, I don't want to discourage anybody from e-scouting or any of that either. I'm just saying that I haven't found where it gives me a huge edge of any sort myself, but and most certainly I think that there's certain hunts and certain species and things like that I think a lot of hunters can benefit from doing a bit of that. But here again, if you're not careful, you get too premeditated on how things are happening before you've actually you're fantasizing. It's a facade.
You walk in there and you're like, oh, this ain't exactly
I bet,
what it looked like.
they're moving through like this. This is, and the dream world kicks in and this whole facade thing comes about. And it's like, then you get there and it's overpressured to no end. And it's nothing like you saw in there. And then it's like, oh, now what do I do? And then it's a human nature tendency is try to build it into something that it's not, because they're already that invested. And then, a guy like me comes in that didn't do any e-scouting, and he's like, man, this hell out of here. And I'm on to the next, trying to find the next pocket. It doesn't even affect me because I haven't spent, hours and then weeks and months preloading my mind with dream world stuff. I'm just adapting on the fly. It's so much simpler to do it that way. But it's kind of an art to a certain degree, and with art you get better at it as time goes on. So
that gives me something a lot to think about, because I kind of dealt with that last year when we went to Indiana. Me and Jeremiah were looking over, and I'm like, oh, this spot looks really good. And we walked in, and I'm like, there's 4 or 5 cars here. And we ran into 2 guys on the way in, how good is this spot? And then we kept walking and got farther away from the parking lot. And, we got into more sign the farther we got away from people and stuff like that. It probably helps you focus a lot more on your woodsmanship too, right?
Yeah. In terms of
boots on the ground, getting in there.
Yeah, not focusing so much more on the technology.
Well, when you're going into when you're going to the timber without visuals, because we don't know, or I'm going to speak from my perspective, because I don't know. I'm not going to speak for everybody else. Because I don't know, if I'm going into timber without a visual of any sort and no prior information about it, in this particular case, we'll say, I'm still going to try to cover as much acreage in that timber as best I can. Hopefully not blow out, say, a big buck, but I'm still going to try to get through it as fast as I can. And how do I say this? You're trying to cover as much ground, or at least I'm trying to cover as much ground when I go into timber as I can, as quickly as I can, without blowing out a big buck in the event a big buck is there. Because if there is no big buck there, I want to weave through the whole thing and get onto the next spot. that maybe
Mhm.
does have a big buck. But that's a very fine line balance, because it's you're going off a gut feeling, and so a lot of times on as you go, and then you have all these other variables like how much wind do you have, for cover noise and cover movement, and certain parts of the timber you can move quicker in than others because you can see a lot further out, and then you're getting into stuff that's thicker, and it's like, well, I got to put on the brakes. But okay, let's say I've covered enough and I'm like, man, I'm getting the feeling that there's nothing here. There's just, that's the kind of stuff you can't put into a textbook.
Yeah. When you don't see the buck sign is what you mean?
What's that?
I said when you're not seeing buck sign, you mean more like doe sign, stuff like that?
I'd say it's not just that though. Because a lot of woods, depending on the time of the year, is going to have a decent amount of buck sign. Every hunt's different and stuff, but I think it's just a culmination of everything. It's not only the deer sign, but the hunter sign and
Pressure.
Pressure. And it's like, because I've come across plenty of public land with plenty of big buck sign and plenty of deer sign. And it's not worth my time because those deer are coming in there in the middle of the night, making all that sign. And if I go too slow through there, I'm just hanging out by sign that's made in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Those deer have figured it out over years and years and years that they're safe going through there in the night, but to get out of there come daylight. So that's where it's like a person's got to kind of be careful on that too.
Yeah.